Okay, so greetings, everyone. Hola. um, Welcome to our second to the last call for intensive. Certainly not the last for everything. There's always continuity. We've been through so much, I would say, experiences, material. There's so much in the space. So I guess we could maybe have fun and keep things conversational. Um, I I posted today that maybe we could host questions. There are probably other ones at the top or at the bottom of your mind that we can harvest that could be interlinked with some of the questions that were put up on the group. So it would be interesting to just maybe have a conversation. I don't want to be just a source of knowledge here. It could be interesting for us to, all of us to think and to feel out the insights, possible answers to the questions, using our creativity, our intuition, but also using our like what we've learned. What have we learned um, from the last months, like the last weeks? I think that's a really good way to learn, to have something practical and something concrete. Um, like how would you interrelate the theories and the perspectives with real world scenarios? How do you apply inner dance using perspectives and what we know now about the energy, the human body, the human mind, the human brain? How do you apply what you know about like the music and the way we touch bodies, the way we use words? Um, okay, so if I share my screen here, then we can browse collectively the WhatsApp space. So here we have the questions. I guess it's a way to organize things. Here's a question. Here's another one. Here's another one. So I'll just read a few and then let those wash over us. Inner dance during birthing a child. Okay. I think this is just a sharing, so let's maybe skip that for now. Christy asked, breath work in relation to the natural flow of the energy, would it be supportive? And then one of the most common questions is to do with mapping. Something to do, especially to do with holding bodies. And a lot of people want to go into touch. Like, what does it mean to touch people? Where do you touch? How do you touch? There you go again. There's another thing in touch. And then Percy goes back into electricity and magnetism, electromagnetic fields. I'm not sure how much we can go into this. It should be connected, but I'm not sure how to approach that. And then Dinike wants to go into this interesting question between lying in the back or lying in the stomach. I haven't thought about that like so much, so I think that's interesting. Let's go first into this. Inner dance during birthing a child. Inner dance and pregnant women, right? Interesting for some, maybe something a lot of people don't think about so much. there are many people who restrict doing energy process with pregnant women. Innerdance is the opposite. We always work with pregnant women. There are facilitators who particularly do this. You know, they set up spaces that's mostly for mothers, mothers to be, mothers already. Largely in Finland, like the community there brought like a sharp focus to mothers, and that's maybe the community where there's the most support I've seen historically for those going through birthing. So I want to see if this is interesting for you guys. Is this something you've thought about? Do you think it's interesting? Is it safe? What would you do with a pregnant woman? And then there are weird, interesting things that are unexpected around this. What about those situations when someone isn't pregnant and then goes into an actual birth experience? And this isn't even reserved for women. I've watched men give birth. So I guess it's possible to give birth to yourself in a way, whether you're a man or a woman. So you might see this. So has anyone seen this? Has anyone thought about these? Are there thoughts around? I want to see just what you guys think. This is interesting. Okay, I'm seeing Daniel. Daniel's on my screen. I see you nodding.
We've seen it both actually in woman, and Alberto here, he had the experience of giving birth himself.
Yeah, it was like just the movement, not feeling giving birth, but the movement and the position was like very strange for me, because there was another girl, and after the session, she said, I was giving birth, and I said, okay, I was in the same position, but I can't understand why. Yeah, but it was very interesting.
Nice. Anyone else has had this in the experience, or? Okay, yeah, so I guess I could speak about this. It's really a deep thing, you know, like what it means to be pregnant in the first place. In general, what we've learned is when women learn to deal with fear and learn to release and let go of like fear, like fear, tension, the birthing process becomes a lot easier. So in other words, I guess to generalize or have a worldview around this, when women get a chance to give birth before they give birth, meaning the energy of letting go, of releasing, because giving birth is somewhat like that, and there could be correlations between the menstrual cycle, you know, during the ovulation period and then the menstrual period. There are similar things that happen in the female body as to birth. So when I spend time with women who are going through the menstrual cycle, when they use innerdance to go into release, in observation with women who have gone through birth, it's actually the same energy. So we've gone into like circuitry and chemistry, and I think in general, something that happens in energy that happens in birth has to do with that which opens and that which closes, that which goes up and that which goes down. The terminology midwives, doulas work with is the contraction and the expansion. In the inner dance, there's that which expands, and then there's that which contracts. So I think this is what people might study. I'm checking the names. The person who asked this question actually isn't here, so she's gonna have to watch this. When we facilitate the water birth or the gentle birth, which means in inner dance we would use music. My personal technique has to do with when the contractions are happening, and you will know when this is taking place, when those waves are beginning to speed up, to heighten or accelerate in the female body. What I actually do is I then would play more relaxing music. And then when the contractions stop, that's when I would play more alive music, that which has a beat, a tempo that's higher. I don't know exactly what that does, but from my experience, that has quickened the birthing process so that women get to give birth a lot sooner, like hours sooner. I midwifed my 2 kids, and I've assisted in the birthing process of other women. Let's go into the shared screen for this. Okay, so I did some prior mappings. Let's go into some of these slowly today. But maybe let's start with something simple. So we've implicated a part of the brain that it's responsible for many things in the inner dance. The hypothalamus is responsible for the circadian rhythms, the autonomic nervous system, breathing, the heartbeat. It's responsible for emotions, especially fear. That's where we hide fear. So there are these chemicals that are sent out that allow for these to be regulated. So one of for one, many things related to inner dance are implicated within the hypothalamic function. Number 2, the hypothalamus is very easily triggered by music. So whether a person is pregnant or not, if you want to activate the circadian rhythms, the autonomic nervous system, breath, heartbeat, emotion, and so on and so forth, music will activate that. Now, chemicals are sent out by the hypothalamus that goes into the pituitary gland, that goes into the other endocrine systems. Now, one of the most important chemicals that is secreted by the hypothalamus is this thing called oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is the chemical of choice for birth, so that this is what allows contractions to happen when we're giving birth. So this answers the questions posed by Albert, and based on what was happening there in Spain. When oxytocin levels go up, and this is supposed to be the love hormone, when you're in love, when you're feeling like close to someone, oxytocin levels go up. Interestingly, it actually has this function of allowing the contractions to push the baby. The same thing could happen during the menstrual period when you're supposed to send out the egg. It has this way of activating the uterus so that it could push out the. So that's a really simple explanation for what we could offer. I've facilitated like pregnant women all the way to 3rd term pregnancy, and they've gone through contractions because people would be scared. Okay, if I do this, then maybe I'd cause like a miscarriage for someone who's not yet supposed to give birth. Why would I create contractions when, you know. So I've seen, women with like late stage pregnancy having contractions, but the baby doesn't come out. So there's something about the human body that experiences contraction and expansion through fear and trust. And I think training the body to get used to the actual moment where there would be the ripe conditions when a birthing would happen. That is what we study. It's very, very general what I can share here. I'm just saying that a lot of what we're doing in inner dance brings about effects in terms of the sleep-wake cycle, the autonomic nervous system, the circadian rhythms, emotions. So just being confident that having the music there, knowing what you're doing, almost everything about inner dance actually prepares us for birthing. So thank you for the sharing that you guys gave, Daniel and Albert. This is just super common. So if you hold intense retreats, not so much workshops, but like continuous retreats where people kept doing inner dance again and again and again, there's like an increase or a buildup where the culmination or the climax will happen in a birth. It's almost like this height of the healing process has to do with giving birth to oneself. When there is awareness, when it happens, that's what people explain. It's almost like I was my own mother, and then I was the baby, and I was giving birth to myself. There are psychological, neurological, spiritual ramifications to that. It bears so much meaning. Are there more ideas or questions around this topic that gets triggered in you before we move on? There's a lot more, but just it would be good to go into the other questions. Okay, so let's go back to our list. Okay, so breath work. What's the role of breath work? Is it supportive of the energy? And Prissy honestly asks, will it work against the natural flow of the energy? Who has done it? Who has tried it? Who has thought about it? Who has combined their inner dance process with breath work? What has it done, if any? I'm seeing heads shaking.
I have not combined, but I remember that years ago when I did breath work, inner dance actually happened afterwards. But I didn't know it was inner dance at the time because this is already like 5-6 years ago. But my body started shaking after we had done the breath work, and it continued for about half an hour after it. And it was interesting. I didn't know at the time what it was, but yeah, it happened after breath work.
Thank you, Anarika.
I have also a lot of friends that have done breath work, and we had a lot of people that come to the sessions, and they say they had a similar experience than with inner dance than with breath work. I've been also willing to try it, but I have never tried the experience, so I don't know.
Yeah. This question has been here for years. I don't do breath work. I never did it. It's not a practice that I'm trained in. For me, what's interesting that reverses what Anarika shared is either you do breath work and inner dance comes up, or either you do inner dance and then breath work will come up, if it will. The breath should build naturally. No, I don't like the word should, like it could come up naturally or not. I don't like forcing things. I think if it's meant to be, like the build-up, then it's going to happen. A lot of these questions that would be posed are always situational. So it depends, for example, on what time of the day or what's going on in the person. So I would say breath work would work with some people. And then breath work would work with some people during a certain time of the day or the year. Also based on what's happening to them. So there are these situational conditions that would determine what would work and what would not. So we would need to think about, okay, what is it about breath work anyway that works? So thank you, Anarika. It really is amazing to understand that there are certain conditions that are stimulated to bring about inner dance phenomena. We've spoken a lot about, say, the most obvious would be to look at the autonomic nervous system, right? So breath work would be, in the beginning, a buildup that stimulates the heart, the breath. So the lungs would, you would push the lungs. This isn't actually a good example because breath work would be closer to the somatic nervous system rather than the autonomic nervous system, right? The somatic nervous system would tap into control-based mechanisms of the central and peripheral nervous system, where you would be commanding your lungs to breathe at a certain speed and a certain intensity through your will. You tell yourself, okay, breathe in this way, push, and then relax, push, and then let go. And because the inner dance works with an entirely different set of nerves, the autonomic nervous system is quite different from the somatic nervous system. Then I wouldn't say I would be sure if breath work would always work. I did a demo with a woman yesterday, and it's a very, very interesting case study. The lady she was quite young. She's from Belgium. And then I wanted to do a demo prior to some partner work that we were going to do in Maya. So I asked her to come to the middle. I know where she's coming from throughout the week that she's been in Maya. And before the process, she asked the question, Pai, I really need to pee. Should I pee or not? Should I go to the bathroom first or not? I decided, no. No, let's do the demo now. What do you think is the difference between being or not being? Would it be the same inner dance or not? No, it would not be the same experience. Let's go to the map here. Did we look at this or no? Let's look at this one. All right, so this is chakra based. I don't know if you watched the last Zoom call, but anyhow, the adrenaline gland is the power gland. It's the yellow chakra system. Okay, just to look at that. So here there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of power. So when you study the adrenaline gland, where is it located? So the adrenaline gland is located right on top of the kidneys. So there's a lot of energy, not just in the adrenal system, but also in the urinary system. So, I don't know if you've noticed it when you're, let's say, in a meeting or in a conversation and you really have to pee. I tend to be very irritated when I have to pee and then I'm having to concentrate. So if I'm in a meeting, if you talk to me and I really have to go, my mind can't focus really well. So there's this huge buildup. There's this huge buildup of energy, of anxiety, of fear. And so if I just urinate, then I would just totally relax and just be in the present moment. So I asked this lady to lay down, and she's just filled with this thing that wants to birth. And in the beginning, she's relaxed. It seems like nothing's happening. And so I begin to stimulate the energy a little bit. Very, very subtle. I would take something like this and do that before I start to build it up. At the same time, I'm speaking to her. I'm just talking about this because her breath began to build. I remember, and everyone was watching. Like she would breathe in, and 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 then she'd start to breathe faster and faster. Usually, when the breath builds or accelerates, it's very shallow. Sometimes it's deep, sometimes it's shallow, but usually when it gets faster, it's more shallow because it's actually hard to breathe deep while also breathing fast. You need to expand your lungs, and then you need to speed up the expansion and the contraction faster, and it's actually quite hard to control that somatically or autonomically. Long story short, like the process is very intense. She didn't really scream, but like it was very, she was releasing a lot, and her body just went into this this process. So that's one instance where the breath is supposed to come on its own. But if she went to the bathroom, the breathing probably wouldn't have built up. It probably would have just stayed there, and it probably would not have used what was built up to go into like an emotional process. So I think maybe I'm answering my own question. If she went to the bathroom, then maybe breath work would help. Because she doesn't have the buildup. So let's say, okay, you're dealing with people who live in the islands and are super relaxed, as opposed to people who are living in cities where there's already kind of a buildup. It depends whether people are tense or intense, or they're super chill and I guess I've seen this based on people practicing what's called innerdance breath work. There is an actual movement called IDB, or innerdance breath work. I can see IDB working more with people who are needing like the push and are more in a chilled, less tense environment, so that maybe something deeper can come through. And at the end of the day, it's still the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system at work there, that if you need to access the fight or flight elements that aren't so obvious and are in the surface level, maybe pushing the breath in some way to create a response mechanism. It could still be the same with like going back to this, because the hypothalamus is the endocrine gland that commands a lot of the other glands. Let's say because it controls the breath, it could be vice versa. If you increase the breath, you actually could stimulate the hypothalamus to then allow the further stimulation of the heartbeat, emotions, the entire autonomic nervous system, and the circadian rhythms. So yeah, I think it would work, but it really depends on the people. I wouldn't, just say it's applicable for everyone. So I guess experimentation would be interesting, but use your powers of observation. Don't just do things thinking everything would apply to everyone. It depends on your audience. I think breath work takes time. So if you want to focus on the little time you might have, just use your gifts. Also, I think certain communities are already quite activated. There's so much going on already, like in brains and bodies and minds. So if you know that people are so easily activated, why would you need like a somatic controlled stimulus if people are already in this autonomic intelligence, right? It may make more sense to keep with what is the most organic, so that if it was to come up, because every time you give people like a causality, let's say, okay, because I breathed in this way, then I would go into that experience, then it's almost like you're entraining them that, okay, because I need to do this, then that is going to happen. Then that is the cause of this as an effect. It makes us more and more dependent on a reductive view of the body as the cause, meaning like breathing, for example. Yeah. So yeah, like some last perspectives going back to this point about breathing deep and then breathing fast being kind of a natural, it does activate like I think there's a part of the brain called the pons that's also quite near the hypothalamus. Also enters the neurotransmitters and hormones in general that would definitely lead to activation. So I'm not canceling things out. I think if we're training the body to go beyond its limits, I probably would try breath work to help people go to unnatural ways of breathing that could change patterns and so on and so forth. But if I was to explore that with people, it would not be alongside just inner dance. There could be experimentations and explorations on doing it that's even not having to do with an inner dance experience, meaning, in line with the other tools that we use, so that we could maybe benefit from the insights that would be particular to that space. Yeah, anyone else had ideas in breathwork before we move into a next question? Okay, if not, then let's go back to the list. All right, so I think this is going to bring us to the most interesting, the most common question, which is the mapping that I think has to do with Carolyn talked about reading the space, but then she talked about touch. So I think maybe we can go into touch now. It's come up a lot. It's there. Actually, not so much. Maybe three people asked to go into touch. Okay, so touch. Yeah, this for me is rich and sensitive. It's too easy to approach this topic from an oversimplistic point of view, touch is important. I touch people. I hold people's bodies a lot. But touch is not my main mechanism. I think there are many things that are more important than touch. One of which, when we think about the body, is position. I would rather position the body much more than I would just hold. And when you mention touch, there's also the thing about pressure. It's one thing to touch or to hold, and then it's another thing to hold in a certain way that allows for building up or for going deep into layers, right? And when you apply pressure would be way different. Let's say if I'm applying pressure in the chest or in the abdomen or in the head somewhere or in the legs or in the arms, the shoulders. So I think what we're talking about here, we were to start another just keep this conversational as well later. Okay, why would you do this? Normally when you're conducting an inner dance process, there are these two mechanisms that are at work. Okay, so when you touch people, you can either facilitate that or you would facilitate this, right? So there are ways of holding bodies that would either do this or do that. So normally when you think of touch, this would come up more, like holding the body so that the body would relax. Normally when you think about trust, what we're talking about is like opening the body so that whatever tension is there would release and people would relax. But if you're just doing that, like inner dance as a modality doesn't usually happen. So like this is really important. So the question is, are there ways of holding the body or touching the body or doing it in a certain body part that would facilitate this, right? Those are two very different ways of holding bodies. And then there are areas that would trigger people more. And then there are areas that would relax people more. So I guess that's related to the mapping process. Again, I think this is really, really situational. Let me show you like another map that would be interesting with this. Okay, I think this one. Okay, so in relation to the circadian rhythms, when you think about melatonin, which is sent out by the pineal gland that helps you go to sleep, as opposed to cortisol, the stress hormone, right? If you facilitate someone, let's say okay, let's first look at melatonin. That would be the green line. Let's say melatonin is highest at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is 15 minutes from now over here in the Philippines. This is the time when I should be sleeping, the deepest, but somehow I'm awake. If I conduct an inner dance process at this time, this would be the time when stress hormones would be at its slowest. Okay, wait, let's write things down here. This would be when stress is lowest, and then this is when sleep would be at its highest. And then when you look at this time of the day, let's say here, this time of the day, this is around the time when stress is at its highest. And then this is when sleep would be at its lowest. Okay, so let's say you're conducting a session and it's in a retreat. Would there be a difference between the inner dance at 9 o'clock in the morning as opposed to 9 o'clock at night? Understanding the sleep-wake cycle, that tension and stress would show up totally differently at these times of the day, depending on light and dark, you know. So when you touch someone when they're super tense, okay, just go into all these situations, whether real or imagined, when there's tension built up, would you build in that, or would you need to hold them in a way that would counteract the thing? So I'm just kind of meditating here. I'm trying to go back to all these experiences of holding people who are super jumpy, anxious, or tense, then thinking about all these people who were so chilled out and relaxed. Yeah, there is a difference. There's a difference. So I think that's like a way to read the room. You need to understand where people are coming from, and so the way you would design your music and the way you hold bodies would be determined by what is going on, like inside, like not just reading the room, but reading the energy in people's bodies, reading their physiology, their psychology, their energetics, like what is going on. So in going back to touch then, like in these general specific ways, you need to understand what's happening. Don't just look at their bodies. If they're tense, basically you need to get them to trust. If there's tension there, you need to relax them. You need to help them to be here. You need to communicate with them, both verbally and non-verbally, to just chill out, slow down, be here. But if that's all you're going to do, you're just going to help them to sleep. When you start a session, then this is what's interesting about the sleep-wake cycle. When you ask someone to, it's red. When you ask someone to lay down, okay, your eyes are closed, they're happy, they're smiling. You actually send melatonin levels up, whether they are, whatever time of the day. As soon as you ask them to lay down and you tend to help them to release melatonin levels that might be there, even if they're actually at a low level during the day. You can still send that out, thus sending them into a kind of dream state. So that would help. That would be that would be the primary chemical that allows them to trust. Normally, when people allow themselves to go here to the dream state, they need to be trusting, because when you sleep, that means that you open up your body to anything that's happening in the room. So when you're not trusting, it's actually really hard to sleep. So that's one element of touch. You have to understand, like, why are you touching? It's because we want them to go here, and we want them to prepare for the process. So then when it comes to trigger, trigger mechanisms. You know, so let's say there's the heartbeat, and then there's the adrenal system. You know, you have two adrenaline glands sitting on top both the kidneys. So when you press on this part here, okay, and this region right here, and then when you press in these regions right here, those two spaces do different things. Another way of looking at it is, okay, let's clean this up first. When you think about the autonomic nervous system, so let's say this is the spine. That's the spine. The sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, which is you know, stimulating energy, stimulant. Sympathetic nervous system extends from here to here, the thoracolumbar region. And then the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the energy that allows people to relax, extend from, say, it's from here to here, the cranium and the sacrum, the craniosacral regions, okay? Like it's this part and this part. When you think about touch, already you can see the differences that you don't have to be literal about it, you know, because the sympathetic nervous system nerves would scatter throughout the whole body. Okay, let's go back to this one. Okay, it's still like if this is a sympathetic, it still extends to the eyes, to you know, the salivary glands, the lungs, the heartbeat, the pancreas, the kidneys. It's still the same organs, but they do extend from different regions of the spine. Okay, here's the middle of the spine. This is the sympathetic nervous system. That's the thoracolumbar region. And then here, it's at the top and at the bottom, and this is the parasympathetic nervous system. So when you think about touch, where's our drawing of the guy laying down? When you think about touch, touching certain parts of the body can activate either the sympathetic or the parasympathetic nervous system. So you want to be aware of that. Even though the same parts of the body are wired in accordance to this, if you know that the heartbeat, if the heartbeat is entrainable through the way you hold the chest, for example, like when you hold the chest, do you hold it lightly? And then what happens when you start pressing on the chest? You would experience the buildup because blood pressure actually rises when you constrict the chest area. The same with the like the lungs. When you press in the lungs, when you constrict the lungs a little bit, then there's like a buildup, and then you tend to accelerate the breathing. And when you accelerate the breathing, the other thing that's going to accelerate is like the heartbeat. So this is where touch meets pressure, which could also meet position or proprioception, because maybe you positioned the arms. When you extend the arms, you actually extend the rib cage. So, but in a way that actually constricts the diaphragm, so people can't breathe as easily and as deeply. So you can accelerate the breath, which then accelerates the heartbeat at the same time. So those are interesting things to understand, that you can activate fear and anxiety responses, and you're not afraid of fear or anxiety, because you can use that to be converted into power and energy later. Right. So I'm giving you ideas. I'm giving you ideas here. It's like based on where you're touching, that would activate certain things. And based on how much pressure you're putting onto, it could even be, let's say, this part of the head, or this part of the head, or behind the neck. That would be interesting when you then study the endocrine system. Okay, so we looked at the endocrine system in the last call through the chakra colors. So this would be yellow, this would be orange. Sorry, no, this is red, this is orange, this is yellow, this is the green, this is the blue, and this is the indigo. And in the middle would be the violet. I think there's another representation of this here. No, this is too complicated. I think these are the representations. So you can either activate through the innervation of those glands, digestion, reproduction, action or motivation, healing, growth or metabolism, or intelligence. So that when you have a body that's laying down like this, are you holding the body that activates, let's say, the sexual system, which would be that would be the gonads. So here, that would be, let's say, the testicles or the ovaries. I'm not telling you to go there and touch that. All I'm saying is when you activate the hypothalamus, you would send out signals to the pituitary that would then send out signals to the sexual energy. That could depend on the kind of music that you're using, or the kind of, similarly, it could, activate the digestive system that sends out insulin and help, activates the breaking down of nutrients, which gives people more energy. Or are you activating the adrenaline system, the solar plexus? Are you activating the thymus gland, which allows for autoimmunity, which brings healing about? Are you activating the part of the neck that holds the thyroid? Or are you activating the pineal system that is interconnected with intelligence systems, which involves like a whole bunch of different glands? So what I'm saying here is, when you touch or hold, it's not actually simple. Because normally when I do touch, when I use my hands, I would hold several body parts. When I touch the crown, I would often touch the chest, or I would touch the forehead and I would touch the chest. When I touch the back of the neck, I would usually touch like the orange chakra system, or sometimes I'd touch the forehead, and then it'd be touching the solar plexus. Because there are these axes, or kind of interconnected circuit and chemical systems in the body. There's like a co-activation happening. So because you have two of these, you have these two sets of tools, each of which have these 5 extensions. When I touch, it's either I would touch using my palms. Just to give some examples, when you use your palms as opposed to your fingers, would there be a difference? If you use your palms, normally you're spreading energy out. But if you train your hands so that your fingers are more in use, you're not spreading out, you're actually helping to focus. Because when you know how to use this, let's say you're holding something, there's this very strong sense of extendability. Like I literally can feel my energy like inserting itself like a needle. I don't want to say I'm putting energy into people's bodies, but there's like this extension where I'm almost going into someone. And the feedbacks people would give would be like, wow, I just felt like there was this like line that extended, let's say from here to here, that I could reach like certain depths in the body from there. So to go more complex than that, I would use several fingers at the same time. So when I'm holding the head, for example, speaking about the map, when I hold, let's say, when I'm not always studying this, my fingers would just go somewhere. I almost can never just hold with one finger. It would be like 2 or 3 or 4 or even 10 at a time. Because when you hold one point, that's one thing. But when you hold another point, what you're doing is you're creating a circuit. Like you're creating a wiring. And when when you hold something, there could be possibly an activation, which in a neuronal dimension is a firing. When you hold something, if it's open, it would trigger. If it triggers from an electricity point of view, you would fire something up, and when you fire something up, that's going to be a simultaneous firing of another system or another place in the map. You're going to wire them together. Okay, so a connection will be built. So you don't really isolate like particular points. A lot of what happens in inner dance and the energy process is flow and connections. So what's going to happen is you're going to be magnetized to these different points in the head or across the body so that connections are made. Wirings are made so that circuits are being formed. So you can perceive that from the basis of neurons, synapses, axons, dendrites, or organs or endocrine glands, all of which perform like different functions, right? Like sometimes, let's say, power or motivation, healing, metabolism, growth, intelligence, reproduction. A lot of them need to be activated like at the same time. It already kind of helps to understand that, because the central mechanism that coordinates so much of what happens in the process is this one place. The hypothalamus is the most easily activated part of the body and the head when you go into inner dance. Like it contains, for example, the part of us that coordinates the clock. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is the part of the hypothalamus that coordinates the body clock that determines how you're going to feel and what you're going to do at a certain time of the day. The inner dance hits that clock. You stimulate that clock super easily through the way you position the body and the way you use music. So you change people's perception and experience of time. You bring them into other dimensions of the story, of the history of the earth, the history of the cosmos, a lot of which are determined by the internal clock mechanism. Okay, that's just one thing. It's like then emotion, then autonomic intelligence, and so on and so forth. Because you are getting to know more and more that simply activating that here, the hypothalamus is the one in the middle, activating the pituitary, which governs almost all of the other endocrine systems, which are chakra based, red, orange, green, blue, indigo, the violet coordinates that. Then when you think about touch, this is the crazy thing there. It's like you actually want to touch the whole body. So that cannot be literal. It's not really convenient to try to touch the whole body, especially if there's especially if there's like 10 or 100 bodies. So what you do is you touch in a way that would, let's say, hold rhythm, or it's hard to put into words. It's like in a way that the network would spread, and then even when you're not holding them anymore, it just keeps spreading, like in a way, because you found, let's say, the portals, you found like the doorways that would just keep opening the space. I have like a thought around this. Okay, I guess I would need to interrelate this with sound or with music. Okay. There's a small drum on the table. So here's like a tip or like a technique that you can apply in so many other systems. When you introduce something in the process that is new, let's say it could be a sound. It could be like, okay, that's like a sound. When I introduce that in the beginning, it's like a shock to the system. Okay, you can apply this to touch, to words. So let's say if it's just alone, it's a shock to the system. It could activate, it could wake something up, but alone, it's just a stimulus. All right. So if you follow that up with something that's the same, but holds the pattern, then when it's sustained, then that brings about a particular energy, whether you call it, say, a dimension of time. It would bring about an experience, basically, if you sustain it. It holds an energy, so it could be this. Or it could be, or it could just be. Okay, so when you introduce, let's say, a new music, let's say a particular music was happening, and then you introduce a new music, and then there was a change, let's say, from when the shift happens, that is usually when the energy flow takes place. It's usually in the transition from one system to the other system, when, let's say, an emotion comes up, body starts to move in a particular way, eyes begin to flicker, breath starts to build up or to release. So you want to focus more on the transitions rather than just in the stable points, or just the singular points, is what I'm saying. So this applies to touch, but I want to express first the basic principle that I'm trying to share. So this will be really practical to you, especially when you start making mistakes. And there are no mistakes. But let's say you do something that you didn't mean to do. So let's say you put on a certain music that's super, like, way too loud, and you weren't ready to do it yet, and it doesn't belong to the territory, because let's say they were super chill, super relaxed, super slow, and then you introduce something loud that was violent. So what you do without missing a beat is just to keep sustaining it. And then when the body keeps hearing it, you would have introduced another system to the old system. So that would have a corresponding effect. That would either be indoctrinated by the brain. They would take note of that, and then they would start building images. There would be experiences built on top of that new system that got introduced, that would be placed on top of what they were experiencing prior. So what this does is it creates what's called like a coupling effect. Coupling, neural frequency coupling is something the brain does when it perceives and hears two or three different things. So instead of hearing the 2 or 3 different things, what happens actually is that there would be an averaging out where, so let's say just 2 things. Let's say something slow. And then something fast. So in between the slow and the fast, the brain would actually input the things in between it. So it would start to hear the patterns and the rhythms that's not there. Okay. It would start to compute and make things up. It would start to create these predictions in the space in between. That's what neural frequency coupling means. So when you introduce a certain beat and then introduce another beat on top of that beat, there would be these polyrhythms in between that would be invented by the brain. And so in that way, you don't really need to be the one to provide all the energies to begin with. The body, the brain, the spirit, the energy has a way of inputting the things that are not there through implied meaning making, through, there's like this inner artist that does a lot of these filling the gaps or filling the spaces in between where it seems like there's nothing. On a really dark night, try looking at the space between the stars, and then new stars would pop up that you thought weren't actually there. There's something about consciousness that does that. So when you touch or hold people, there's a lot more in what is implied and subtle rather than the obvious. So don't try to be there for too long on a particular part. When you move across spaces and when you create connections, a lot of what's implied would start to let's say arise or be felt or be present. And then when you know when to move away, that would just keep continuing, especially because maybe there's more people in the room, or because you're using other tools beyond just, like touch and holding people. So yeah, it would be interesting to be aware of this, that you have this way of signaling things, just like almost inviting people to become aware of like a larger space or mysterious areas of experience that they didn't see before. So I think a lot of people would rather, okay, tell me what part of the body to hold, because then I would just go there and hold that, and tell me when to hold it. The truth of the matter is, each body is unique, and that uniqueness of the body will be differentiated across the day. But even if you try to track the circadian rhythms of a body, or circannual rhythms, which means seasonally people's bodies may not be the same in December or January as opposed to in July or June. there's still like way too many situations that would influence the person during that one moment that would not really allow you to predict what to hold, because because of the uniqueness. So at that point you really need to just be in your energy and your heart space to be led and to be magnetized, because like technically the whole body is energy. Everything's energy, so anything you touch would be kind of like a portal, but there is kind of a mapping that is super duper fluid. So you do want to be open. So the things that I am sharing you are sets of universals, so that you would find them in all bodies, hopefully anyway, that they haven't had an operation that took out a specific organ or gland. But most bodies are built the same way, so everyone's going to be the same, but understanding the sheer novelty of all situations, everybody's going to be different. It's always the same, but there are always different pathways to the same thing. So I think, okay, we started all of these with the notion of just to go back to the simplicity part. If you know how to touch, that facilitates that. And if you know how to touch or hold, that facilitates this. And then going back into this question about reading the room, how much anxiety or tension or stress is there already? So if stress levels are high, then you would start with this, because otherwise they won't open. So when you touch the body, and obviously there are parts of the body that could engender trust. Let's say they're stuck in their head, then you can hold them in this region that allows them to expand the mind and to dislocate psychic attention that might be stuck here, so that, let's say, you're touching their small toe. So that can help to dislocate the psychic energy that might be worrying about a problem. Or you touch their knees, or you extend their arms so that they're not overthinking. So there's still so much going on in the brain, but when you expand consciousness across the whole energy field, that can open. But because you are holding an inner dance process, you do want to activate or to stimulate. So I think what is interesting about the chakra system through the endocrine glands in this way is the hypothalamus and the pituitary sends out these chemicals coming just from here, the thing that coordinates the clock, which facilitates the perception of time. The hypothalamus and the pituitary sends out either the thing that stimulates or the thing that inhibits. So for example, the hypothalamus could send out, let's say, talking about the yellow chakra, when you press in the belly like this, talking about touch and let's say pressure. When you press the belly like this, something that you can activate is the stress hormone, which is cortisol, which is secreted by the adrenal cortex, and something else that's sent out in that system is adrenaline. And you know what adrenaline does? It shoots up energy. So a lot of the time when people are experiencing these strong waves, the epileptic waves, there's a lot of cortisol and adrenaline like passing through the system. but a lot of that's being managed here. So for you to send out cortisol, you need to activate in the hypothalamus. It's called the corticotropin releasing hormone, and then that sends out signals to the pituitary to send out adrenocorticotropic hormones, and then that would activate the adrenal system. That's why the mandala is important here, for you to see that there is a central governing system regulating the clock and regulating, like the heartbeat, regulating the breath, that then would get sent out to the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, the blue, the indigo. So you're centralizing it here. The music generally activates the violet, the space in the middle, and then the other organs and glands would co-activate with each other there. But the hypothalamus doesn't just say activate or stimulate. It also has the power to inhibit, because there are these positive and negative feedback loops, so that when there's too much of a certain thing, then it would need to lessen. Let's say if there's too much cortisol, which activates stress levels, it would need to send like a feedback loop to the hypothalamus. Okay, I need you to send less stress hormones in the body. Then it would, instead of sending out corticotropin releasing hormones, it would send out corticotropin inhibiting hormones. So it's the same thing with the thyroid. Say, I don't want to go into the chemistries, but it would be the same thing. And there would be the thyrotropin releasing hormone or the thyrotropin inhibiting hormone. The same with the sexual system. It could be the gonadotropin releasing hormone or the gonadotropin inhibiting hormone. I don't want to bore you with some of these chemistries. What I'm trying to get you interested in is when you use music, primarily, music has the strongest, I would say it's the strongest stimulus entrainment-wise that can either lead to stimulation or inhibition of all of these different functions. So when people experience certain problems with metabolism or autoimmunity or addiction, motivation, sexuality, digestion, or confusion, it might mean that something isn't integrated, and that's a little bit more clear. Go back to this. A lot of the problems certain people have is if the hypothalamus, for example, is storing fear, emotion, especially like aggression. If people have these emotional concerns that haven't really been properly like released or looked at, then there might be problems with a lot of the other systems. So learning how touch actually could bring about like balance. Like I would get you interested with the concept of touching the colors, touching the colors, touching what the colors represent. And you don't need to be literal. Let's say that in that demo I shared with you that I did yesterday, after this huge catharsis over a short amount of time in this young woman, I would turn her head like from side to side, like here first, and then that would be maybe 5 minutes, and then there are these intense things happening. And I'd slowly like see if it would do that, and then it did this, and then there were all these other things that happened, and I brought it back to there. But then somehow later on it wanted to go back there. I didn't do that. She just went there, and then it seemed like she could access like a whole bunch of other things here. But I basically like pressed this hard. And then later on during the sharing, she said, the moment I did that, there was this strong memory that came up around certain things that she was having a hard time looking at. But at that point, like she was made to look at it, like she was able to see like what was there. So don't ask me why I had to press that particular ear that was prominent in a sexually abusive relationship that she used to have that then stored certain things in her body. It's just whatever you end up doing is what is supposed to be happening. I could have held like any other body part, like if I wanted. But it was interesting that the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the amygdala and all these other interesting systems that help to govern emotion, that help to govern time perception, fear, trust. It has a way of telling us or showing us, okay, like look at this in particular. Yeah, so yeah, that's a lot in general. I would say there's so much value in this, but don't lose the sense that there's more. So what I would do after a certain duration of letting a body open, and then again, like triggering, creating like these patterns that would wake something up. And then I leave them alone because there's already this frequency coupling happening. I would then just find a way so that healing is happening on its own. Because if I touch too much at that point, if I'm holding them too much, then I'm creating dependency and reliance. So when the arms are already maybe moving, that means that the energy is circulating. That means they're mapping things out on their own. It means that there's not interdependence, there's now independence happening. Then I can step away. If I'm doing a one-on-one or a demo, I wouldn't step away. I would still be in a conversation with it. But if I'm in a group process, I would step away because already we created the conditions where healing will happen on its own. And in that space, like definitely touch is not important. It becomes redundant, it becomes irrelevant. It almost brings about a blocking of what is already like in an energy flow. Okay, so that's quite a lot. So on this topic, I don't know if there's other major topics that would be as big as this one. So let's keep this topic alive still. Are there questions or ideas that come up as we're going through this?
About touch, when there are when the energy gets stuck in some parts of the body, often in my case it gets stuck in the abdomen or in the belly area. Is there anything I can do with touch for that? If the energy gets stuck somewhere.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, when you want to bring about a release, we're talking about stuckness, then what we're talking about is how do you release what is stuck. I'm not sure if we're talking about you facilitating yourself or others facilitating on someone else other than the self.
Could be
Um,
both ways, but I'm not sure if I would be able to detect that in others. It's easier to do it on myself, right?
yeah. But I guess because this is a coursework on how to hold space for others, more so, it's really, the conversation's really about knowing how to trigger. So what is a trigger to begin with? A trigger is anything that activates a response mechanism. Okay, so the normal response mechanisms in a human being is like the rewards response system, where normally it's addiction that takes place, or it's the stress response mechanism, which is usually the fight or flight or freeze mechanism. So when you trigger someone, let's say by making sounds. So let's say you're learning how to do this. You're making several patterns, and then you're learning how to move across the differences. When you know how to start moving across these different variations, those allow for deeper, triggers, more triggers. It gives permission, it gives allowance for people to activate the heart and to go into brain states that are normally quite stable. Okay, so let's say you're destabilizing something that's stable so that a new balance could arise. So when we're talking about blockages and we're talking about release work, that's what a trigger is. That's what a trigger is for. Normally, when we do touch, it's actually the opposite. Touch and holding normally relaxes and opens the space. So one of the skills that we learn is while you're holding someone, very often you might need to also trigger them. So let's say one hand is holding, the heart is usually where you would touch to open, like opening the heart. Many openings are in the head. So when people are, you can tell when someone's got a migraine or working on like some kind of headache system. You can see they're making these faces, their eyes, they're twitching, they're tense. You can see the space between the eyebrows, or there's like that thing that's, they're knitting the eyebrows, the space between the eyebrows. That's when you need to go there. But then that's when they need to breathe deeper. So you send these slowing down signals. But what you want to happen is to achieve an energy flow. So to do that, some people, they carry instruments, because there are certain instruments that can trigger release and allow for energy flow. But there are so many different kinds of instruments. There's wind instruments, there's percussion instruments, there's string instruments, and there are these objects that you find around the room that when you hit them together, they make noises. And those are the best ones usually, when you go look for like a surface and you look for something that has texture, that really starts to do stuff in people. So you do want to be creative. So when you start doing that, be artistic, be musical, just find any pattern that comes up. And then that would allow for a neural frequency coupling to arise when you introduce, let's say, another texture there. I don't know if you can hear that from my microphone. And then another thing over there. And then, like, as you trigger one way and then you trigger another way, there's a space in between the triggers that would suddenly like hold like an image or some kind of structure or some kind of like thought, bigger thought that holds like other smaller thoughts in place. So that kind of demands confidence. You need to just be there and be present in order to hold the trigger mechanisms confidently, because like a lot of people, they're not okay with triggering. They would rather just, okay, I'm going to relax, I'm going to create safety, I'm going to love them to bits. But if you're not holding like the trigger mechanisms, if you're just doing that like holding thing, then some of the release elements that still might need to happen, they're not going to happen. You could always just touch them and love them after something is, so you need to, in other words, like looking at how the autonomic nervous system works, you're actually there to bring about like fear. Strangely enough, you're there to help them become afraid without being scared, to scare them without them running away, because they are laying down and their eyes are closed and they're already experiencing the energy flow, even maybe before they came, because they agreed to be there. There's already an energy flow because you created those conditions where they're laying down and their eyes are closed, they're horizontal. When you trigger them, you're letting them be scared, which is honest, because there is fear. You can't just believe that most people don't have fear. They're at least afraid of dying, but there are these bottled up fears, these tensions that are hiding, that's not allowing them to fully be themselves. So that's the reason why we have these inbuilt trigger mechanisms in inner dance, that's especially in the music. Like that's one of the big reasons why we use music in the way that we do, because there are textures and tempos, like rhythms, heartbeats in the music that we choose, that we find has these corresponding effects that inherently hold trigger mechanisms in the body. So you cannot escape these principles when you're talking about touch, because we're on the touch component. To then listen to what Anarika is saying. When the energy flow is already there, so let's say it's not just a stuckness. When you do hold that, you don't need to trigger so much when it's already flowing. I think that's also important to say. It's sometimes important to use your touch merely to provide what's called presence. It's really just being present sometimes when already something has been stimulated. And usually when you do create a stimulation and then there's already circuitry and chemistry happening, meaning hormones are being released. And once an authentic release happens, it's not just going to stop. It's just going to keep going. Because it feels good and it's being allowed now, then going back into touch in a way that's really just providing presence. So whether it be like in the abdomen, a lot of which happens at the throat area, or the chest, or maybe the legs are moving, they're flopping from side to side, or the arms are moving like wildly. It really depends on what your initial stimulus was. Like, how did you first bring about like a stimulus? Then that sometimes repeats itself, and even when that moves to another manifestation or phenomena, it's gonna possibly go back to the other release mechanisms. We don't have time to talk about why some of those are happening. The movement, the way we act things out holds a lot of meaning. in gist. Like, so the reason why we do certain releases to do with the arms, the legs, and so on and so forth, it's because we're enacting certain situations that are looping because they were implanted there when people were really young, and they need to reenact the experience sometimes in order to create a new response, a new action, a new perspective that is very body-based, considering like the body holds a lot of the way we conceptualize because we move across the space and there's spatial intelligence at work. Sorry, when I go into these tangents, it just keeps going deeper. So yeah, I guess there are other things that we're able to input into the topic. I don't know if this helps you, Anarika, but your question is, yeah, it's deep and it's rich. Okay, so what else comes up in your notebooks? Questions around these themes? What is triggered in you when we're talking about touch and body maps?
Hi.
Yes.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hey.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. Usually you asked before when I was in Maya, do you remember that you told that it's also very good for us to listen the music before going to sleep? So I'm practicing that every day. So somehow, I don't know, 3 days in a row, it happens with me like while I'm sleeping, my hand, like someone, my right hand from my elbow to my finger, I feel that it's like broken. My bones are breaking inside, and like someone is pulling to another side. And when when I'm awake in the morning, so I feel that it's really hurt me in the morning. So it happens already 3 days in a row. So I really don't know what is going on and what is triggering me. Do I need to clarify or identify that, or just continue, keep going with it?
Okay, so you said it was only one side of the body, right? It was just the right. Did you say it was the right arm?
Only, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right hand, right arm. Yeah.
So based on just that information that you provided, then what we know is that you are stretching the left hemisphere of the brain, which is the linear part of the brain. So that means that you're letting go of a lot of stories and sequencing, the way you sequence things, the way you organize things. It has more to do with certain stories that you don't want to get stuck in. So a lot of the stories are held here in the right arm and in the left brain. So
okay.
I think it's really good. Just you need to keep trusting it, because if it's doing that and it's just been 3 nights, it means that something's actually happening. So even if it hurts, the thing with these new playlists that are sleep entrainment based, actually my instructions are to use it not before sleeping but during sleeping. So try to moderate the volume lower and then go to sleep with it, so that it's not just giving you experiences while you're conscious. The trick with these is to allow yourself to do some of the work while you're sleeping. That could be interesting too. So yeah, go ahead. You had something else.
Okay, thank you so much. Because the same I have with my clients as well. And do you remember with the lady with the cancer? She has like while her sleep, she has very good experience as well. Like in the morning, she just saying that she saw lots of things and something was going on with her too. So that's why I just want to clarify that too. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, this data is really important for me and for others right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? So we could just I think go with anything that comes up. Let's just have a conversation and sharing in general about whatever. I see a hand up. Natalie, yes.
I just have a small question. Are we gonna lay down one time more or don't? And the other question is, are you coming to Europe and when?
Okay, really practical question. So good news is yes, I have my Europe visa. We will leave in early June, and I am only allowed to stay for 3 months. So in fact, they gave me 87 days to be in Europe. So we will be traveling maybe in August to Belgium and to Germany, either in June or August. And mostly we will be staying in Finland. And at the end of our trip, we will do a training in Turkey. So it's Italy. I need to speak to about some of the details. I am very happy to just keep offering online journeys beyond our 3 months together. So I can just make announcements here. For me, that's practical because I use those as an opportunity to record some of these new playlist systems. So I'm happy to I'm able to do the recording. People can lay down, and it's like a live process, which is kind of powerful in its own way. So after these conversations we're having with an intensive, then there's Studios Mundos, the community group. So anyone who wants to enter that after our 3 months, you're free to do so, and like you can keep studying. That's for lifelong studies. So don't feel like we're ending. This is actually usually just the starting point and the kind of conversations that happen in Studios Mundos, considering it's mostly people who have been through all these intensives, and as well there are super long-term facilitators. The conversations are quite like super rich. They're really, really deep in so many ways, and a lot of you would just enjoy. So welcome to the community for those who just want to keep in touch with the Inner Dance Circle. As you know, we're always open source, open space. We don't even care what people call their energy practice. What's important is that we're studying together. So I think we may not be able to go to the UK. I don't think there's the time. So that might be next year. Sorry, Lynn. Anyone else? Question, ideas?
Hi.
Yes.
I don't know if it's my phone, but I wasn't able really to see how you were touching in the abdomen area, and now I'm a bit insecure. So I was like, yeah, I really need to ask that.
Okay, let's see how this could be answerable. You came a little bit late to the call, right? I just noticed because we tackled the inner dance for birthing, which you brought up.
Yeah.
So either you just need to watch the first part of the call because we did go into that.
Thank you.
So when I work, let's just say if I work with this, the question is, what is here? So let's go to the screen. This is what's so intense about the abdomen. Digestion, reproduction, and actions there, which is to say the adrenal system, the digestive system, and the sexual system is there. So when you're holding that in general, they're all co-activating with each other. So if you're going to work on it from a regional space, then it's okay to use your palms because that spreads the energy out. But if it feels really specific, there are specific points there that I normally am interested in. There's, like the lowest rib, like I tend to press that a lot. When you talk about, let's say, the solar plexus, the most powerful part there is the adrenaline gland. But a lot of people don't know there's two glands. They're on top of both kidneys, so there's two of them. So the adrenaline gland sends out like adrenaline and cortisol, and it doesn't take much. Even small amounts of adrenaline, which is sometimes called epinephrine, when you send that, that's like a powerhouse, and that goes into the bloodstream. So a lot of the effects of that is actually felt throughout the whole body. So you could centralize that somehow, like there's a soft spot here that's also quite hard, and for many people it's quite tense. So when you press it, it activates the heartbeat. For one, it's because when you compress the diaphragm and the lungs like that, people can't breathe the same way. So the even slight pressure on it would make people breathe differently, and it would create this almost like anxious buildup. So for people who've taken psychedelics before, there's this buildup in the beginning of the experience before it hits you, where you get anxious and it's like, oh wait, I don't want to take this anymore. A lot of that gets activated. It's actually the spreading out of some of these neurotransmitters that I mentioned, which is responsible for like motivation. It could also be addiction, but it could also be power, and it could also be like stress. A lot of those really they're called either androgens or catecholamines. They're the stimulants. Most of the stimulants in our body is actually here. So when you press that kind of boosts or wakes things up. What else can I say? So very usefully, I'm saying if you use your palms, then you're generalizing throughout the whole area. And normally when, let's say, sexual energies rise up, like estrogen, testosterone, they actually start to intermix with dopamine, and there is dopamine here as well. And then there's adrenaline. A lot of that, they're called excitatory hormones and neurotransmitters, and they still co-activate with a lot of what's happening here. So if you're generally working in the whole red, orange, yellow area, then generally pressing. I don't even usually, in the past when I was facilitating a lot more, I generally would just go over there and sit there. I would just sit on someone, and then I would control the pressure so that I'm not going to put my full weight there. I like sitting on people because then I can free up my hands and I can access whatever needs to be held here. So you can control the angle based on what buildup is there, and then you can slowly just release when it, but you need to do that carefully. You need to know, does this person feel safe? Are they okay for me to sit on them? I used don't try this necessarily, but I used to stand on people I'm not just saying putting one leg on a person, but I would put both legs on a person and even push down if there was like a low ceiling. And even with like thin people, here's I think what some people need to hear when they're studying what is there. When do you press and when do you not? And it doesn't matter whether you're using a finger or like your palm. Here's my learning. When you begin to do it, and when you press down, if something pushes up, that means you're allowed. If something's pushing back, it means there's something there. And so when you press even more, if it pushes back even more, that means that you found like a power system that's holding everything from emotion to just energy that's like bound up, that's waiting to be released. So when it just keeps pushing back and it's really strong, don't be afraid then to just keep pushing. But if it's not there, if it's just like soft organs and all of that, and you can't feel the energy, then don't do it.
Thank you.
It's a lot there.
Yeah, it's really clear. Thank you.
Okay, George, you've got your hand raised.
Hi, bye. How are you? Very interesting topics today, actually, very amazing. My question, actually, it's about some technicality of creating a playlist. So if I understand it correctly, I understand it actually right, but should we both like the waves, I mean delta, alpha, underneath the music on the DJ app? Should we do it? Or you mean only both the music which corresponds to delta, which slow music in the beginning, and we go up from this? Or should we also put underneath this the waves, I mean delta and theta and alpha, and play with it? So it's I'm a little bit confused, because I don't know which one to use.
You need to, this is so good to clarify, so thank you. You're going to be helping other people by asking this, because maybe they're asking this without asking this, either consciously or unconsciously. Let's go to the screen. Let's make a new one. Yeah, and thank you for the feedback. I think we're able to talk now because we've gone over so many theories. So, these practicalities are backed by deep understandings. Actually, there's this ready one here. So let's say a playlist would go up and down, however that looks like. If this is delta, your question is really good, George. Normally what we do is, even when we raise the playlist levels to incorporate more, like faster oscillations, say alpha, mu, SMR, or let's just say beta, gamma, high oscillating frequencies. What we normally do is we would hold delta all throughout. And historically, even when we made choices of music that had buildups in them, a lot of them actually had delta underneath. Because let's say when you add, let's say, higher, not just there's a bass, but also that which doesn't have so much rhythm, or even like waveforms that are more intense compared to like sine wave. And when you create a buildup, there would feel to your ears that like it feels like something's missing. When you build it up in a way that it becomes too, let's say, dancey, to alive, when you lose the deepness, the depth, you can feel that I'm losing the trance. I'm just bringing them to the club. It's too party, and you know, they won't experience the, let's say, the visions that could be there, and the emotions that, so as a general principle, you want to hold something that holds them down, and that would be something deeper, something normally like meditative, something that holds that which doesn't have rhythm. So what we normally do, what we normally use is not the it's not the DJ app. The most useful thing for that is the noise app. So you need the noise app underneath. You need to make sure that in the settings that the noise app can correlate with the DJ app. And what's great about the noise app is when you put on a specific like noise, let's say it could be like a drone, you know, that's delta. It could be some, you know, cosmic. There are a lot of stuff there that's like cosmic, or it could even be white noise, but you put on more the bass levels of white noise. What's great about it is once you turn it on, it doesn't stop until you shut it down. It becomes problematic when you rely on, let's say, certain tracks that have delta. If you know how to use that and just, you know, loop that, it's okay. But it could be easier for most people just to put on a noise in a background to hold that deeper frequency, because it doesn't shut down on you, right? And then you can even adjust one of the toggle switches so that, you know, it because what you do want to do is when you create something consistent, you also do want to make changes, because every time you make a change, that's when something happens. When you become too stagnant, when you get stuck on a particular thing, either there would be attachment or they just lose their, you know, because inside something's always actually moving, and there's this illusion of stability. Like inside, when we go to sleep or when we're awake, something's always moving. So when we meet that movement, the dynamism with, so yeah, this is it.
Okay, so on the bass,
Yeah.
if I use like a noise or like to as a delta, or to keep them on the ground a little, or actually along the long way of the playlist, what's the difference if I use a pure delta wave?
Good question. I've tried both. What I normally use in representation of what we're talking about is, okay, let me give an example. So if I'm using the DJ app, what I would do is I would look for tracks that are long, let's say 40 minutes long, so I don't need to keep changing things. So one of the things that I've used most commonly within the DJ app is, for example, a track called Choir of Angels. Yeah, I could share that with you guys. So it's not even bass. It's a bunch of women chanting like angels in like a choir kind of thing. So it's high, but it's holding a delta effect, because it's so in terms of the frequency is high, meaning the pitch is high, but it's holding a delta effect. But obviously I do need something lower. So based on what you're saying, I might look for something even high and low to be held together at the same time. So if I add, let's say, tracks that have more rhythm, have more beats, what you kind of want is to hold like a whole range. You know, it's from here to there, but artistically maybe you start conservatively somewhere here, but even as you're going up, you're holding this So maybe later on you're actually holding this and this. So what you're going for is like a, you know, that's like a brain state. That's like a, it's like a neural storm. But the reason why we would want to kind of hold a wave is usually there's a story that wants to come out in the body and in people that allows them to process not all the emotions at the same time, you know, like one at a time. So there is a lot of wisdom in going up and down, but where we're able to hold interdimensionality more and more is try to anchor them as consistently as possible within a range. So when we talk about neural frequency coupling, and you know, you learn this, you practice it. So, some of these things that you use as anchor mechanisms doesn't need to be so loud, you know, but because you're bringing presence there, you're allowing them to create that space in between. And the wider the range, the better. So let's say I'm not set. I can easily maybe set up. Maybe I need to. It's better to demonstrate. So let me get my phone to stream. So let me share my iPhone because these are practical questions. Okay. I hope the sound comes out well. So for example, okay, when you look at these ones, that does something, you know. I wouldn't necessarily have this on the whole time, but this is like a useful example of.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Yeah, you see what I mean?
Isochronic tones is pure tones. Yes, it's very interesting.
So then, let's say when you try this one alternatively. But then you could mix them up. So it's a bigger range, you know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so you see what I mean? It's consistent.
Yes.
Meaning when you say delta, it would still need like some kind of waveform that holds dynamism, because if it's too flat, let's say a sine wave is a pure wave, but it's a wave that doesn't actually exist in nature. It exists only through human creation. It doesn't exist in the brain. It's not measured anywhere. So something too pure, in fact, it doesn't exist. The purity needs to be created from inside through, like, purity is either nothing or it's actually everything. So we're training the body and the brain to, like, how much can you hold?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I love this question. Like where this is coming from and where this is going is, most human brains aren't actually used to a wide range. It's because of enculturation. It's because of what they were, the frequencies people are exposed to. They're quite conservative, and right now the human brain and central nervous system is stretching out, and partly that's why you're there, to help them, like, go beyond limitations and boundaries. So when you find confidence, the more you're able to hold the tinier but faster frequencies, the higher oscillating frequencies, along with delta, that really is inner dance at its core, at its heart. So using these, and not so much just middle ground, which is where normal music is coming from, entertaining music, relaxing music, performative music, music that you'd hear in the radio, which normally would not bring people into expanded, trancey, psychedelic, transformative healing states. When you go to sleep, the brain waves go really high, but there's something holding it. It's really, really low. So our teacher is actually mostly the circadian rhythms, this ancient rhythmicity that the human brain had learned to hold so we could retain the range, mostly by going into the dream state. The reason why we go into the dream is to expand the waves that normally get very limited when we're awake and going through our problems. Yeah, great question.
Thank you,
Okay.
Boy. Thank you.
Yeah. So anyone else? We covered quite a lot. Let's go through the questions. I think there was one more from Tineke. This is an interesting one. This is, like I said, I don't think about this. Is there a difference between lying in the back or lying in the stomach? With the assumption that lying in the stomach frees up the spine, would the energy flow better because there's no pressure in the spine, vice versa? Daniel, I think I see you a lot, like laying on your stomach. What does that do as opposed to laying in your back? I don't know if you're in the room right now. Or anyone else, do you tend to lay on your stomach or in your back? I'd like to hear experiences.
I'm here by, for me, laying on my back or on my spine, it's the big difference. I think it's my body that moves alone, and of course you have a different experience, but the energy will rise anyway, even though if you're lying in your back or in your spine. I think for me, I prefer to start always in the spine, and then your body will move with the flow, and it will ask you to lay on your back. On your back, sorry, on your belly.
Why do you even lay on your stomach? On your stomach.
Why do I? It's I don't know, in the moment I'm in this trance, and it's my body who is moving, the energy that moves me. It's not like I'm thinking now I need to go upside down, it's not. I don't know what to answer to that. I don't know why my body asks me like to lay on my belly.
Okay. Yeah. I was only asking it because he's so consistent with it. He's always ending up there. In general, I think laying on your stomach would restrict the movement. I also don't. I personally can't do it because I can't breathe properly. So if there's this idea that we would place pressure on the spine if you're laying on our back, I think laying on your stomach actually puts pressure in your lungs. And even I have this weird chest form. I'm pigeon chested, so my heart gets compressed a lot when I lay in my. So I think based on the way the spine is shaped, I think just laying on the back is more flow based. If people aren't laying on something thick and soft and not having pillows in their neck. But because of observation and seeing people like Daniel doing it all the time, definitely there's something there. So it's not something we're going to cancel out. It's just really a possibility. But it doesn't make sense for me to start sessions where we ask people, okay, now lay on your stomach, just like the way people start out in when getting a massage. When I massage people, I don't ask them to lay on their back. It actually creates dependency when, okay, they're exposing their back, but then they limited their movement. So it's almost asking for, okay, like take out all of my pain and my tension, and I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to lay there, and then you're going to suck all my bad energy out. What inner dance has taught us is there's this energy circularity, so that once the energy starts to go into an energy conversion inside people, we're not healing anyone. We're not taking away anyone's bad energy. We're creating the conditions where the healing can happen on its own. And then when the movement begins to happen, that's really what's happening. So giving people a chance to heal themselves. I think you have a much better chance of that when people are laying down on their back, or even when they sit up for whatever time or one reason or another that happens. Yeah, good one, Shamaria. Yeah. So anything else? Anyone wants to bring up any other question or learnings, as we're doing a lot of integrations now already? Anything in your notebook that you wrote down, took note of? And then we can, I guess, close soon.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, Paula.
Hi. You said when people are too much in their mind, when we're starting inner dance, is it a good idea to touch some parts of the body so they can focus on anything else instead of their mind?
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is where it's going to be up to the space holder. Here are the possibilities. So let's say you wanted them to not be so in their linear headspace. Touching, let's say, the crown, or you don't want to just touch the head in general, because when you do, you actually could get them more in it. So say touching more the back of the head, whatever you could, because you technically cannot touch the back, but you can touch the sides of the back. What is there? The hypothalamus, the amygdala, the basal ganglia, striatum, the reptilian brain, the emotional brain, the clockwork brain, also the occipital lobe. So that sometimes we think seeing happens here. Seeing is received in the occipital lobe. That's where vision is received. But when people are projecting, then that means their seeing is happening here in the forehead. So there would be times when touching the forehead would be interesting. You need to use certain feedback mechanisms to say when you're seeing the eyes going into movement, rapid movement already, then touching that. Normally I touch the forehead like a lot later. I would start with the back of the head or the crown, receiving permission, and that allows for energy flow, and you would sustain that. You wouldn't let go. And if and when you touch the chest, simultaneously or not, putting pressure or not, you can feel if the breath starts to go quicker. So a buildup would be, say, breath goes deeper. They're accessing more oxygen. More hormones are traveling through the bloodstream, meaning activations, what's being released, and then after you release a lot of those chemicals and neurotransmitters needs to be received on the receptor level. There needs to be cell receptors that receives that which stimulates and that which inhibits. What I'm saying is when there's a buildup, that's when thinking would stop. So there is some wisdom to holding more as well, like the middle of the body. So there's a reason why people would go to the abdomen or the chest, because when they're more in their body, they're less in their head. My usual go-to, if it's not those places, I would go for the legs. I say I would go for the, sorry, I would go for the heel, or even the toe. I touch it really lightly, or this part. Okay, what do you call this part? Forget. So how that helps is the technique is you want to help to dislocate what might be too assembled here, right? If they're focused too much on projecting their thought, controlling their environment, a lot of which is happening in what's called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, or the PFC, the prefrontal cortex, which isn't just like attention, it's also holding motor functions, language, the things we normally use to control the world. If you stretch, so think of, say, if their mind is here, I don't know if you experience it sometimes in meditation, it feels like the room is becoming bigger. It's becoming bigger. So it's already quite automatic that when they're laying down, you're already reshaping the mind so people aren't so stuck here. Because when we're standing up or sitting up, we're always here. And our eyes are open, we're always here. So just getting someone to lay down and closing their eyes, there's already the expansion happening. But if you want to help that, let's say, that's why I would touch the leg, like the foot, because it would dislocate. It would bring them more into their body. So sometimes maybe I would make a sound near that part of the body so their mind would go there. Yeah, you wanted to say something.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? It's
Yes.
just being creative. Sometimes you don't even, it doesn't even need to be your hands. You could just, let's say, look for something light. It could be like a small pillow. If you can see, okay, someone's stuck somewhere, get an object. It could be a pillow or a rock. You could either press it there so that they're in their heart, and then you just leave them alone, or you could put the pillow near their legs, and then it would feel like there was a presence that's, it just allows for the energy, the awareness, let's say just awareness to spread and be shaped differently, because we're used to like being like this and like projecting here, just getting them into their body. Because if you're using the music already, then you're already creating the vehicle they're going to ride, whether it's an airplane or a boat or a spaceship. They're going to ride that, but just to help them to dislocate. These tools would be really, they're so simple to use, and fun,
Thank you, sweetie.
You're welcome. Okay, who else would like to use this time remaining? George, you have another question, and then Prissy. I think George asked first, so let's have George, and then let's have Prissy.
Okay, bye. Actually, you told us before, if we raise the right hand, it makes like harmonize the left and right brain, right? So in the beginning of this session,
I don't normally say raise the right arm. What I normally say is extend. So because when you say raise, that means
oh no,
like
no,
this.
I didn't mean that.
So extend means
Extend,
either like just a little bit more open here, and the logic there is the right side of the body, especially the arm, is very much connected to the left hemisphere of the brain. And because the left brain is that which holds linear, function, because that's when people are thinking in a linear, logical, things one at a time kind of way. When you open the right arm, you open up time, time which is a sequence. So in the right brain is like space. So rather than thinking balancing left and right, it's more of expanding where things are normally more like contracted and sequence, because this is already expanded. The right brain doesn't really need so much opening in a way.
Thank you.
So that's in the beginning. But later on, when you do open the left arm, what you're doing is you're creating symmetry. So it doesn't need to stop there. Let's say the right arm starts to move first. Then when you nudge or invite the left arm later, it doesn't have to be like right away. There should actually be time for what mapping could happen. And then when this starts to come up, and then they start to speak to each other, there's symmetry starting to happen on both sides. So learning to respect one at a time, but at the same time. And then even up and down, there would be all these things, down and up. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, okay, proceed.
Everyone, can you hear me good? Yeah, okay. I just have a question about, so if someone lays down, is it okay to reposition the body? Like it is lying down and then you position it into a sitting position?
It's only okay if it does it on its own. So there's this electromagnetism in us that when you touch a body, it gets energized. So it's like a battery, and then it just gets plugged in. So sometimes there's like a feedback mechanism so that the body would start to move while you're touching it. Sometimes it will move when you're not touching it, but there would be certain bodies that when you touch them, and then especially when you put like some pressure, it could be like, for example, in the neck, and you press them hard, then you get a feedback. Either they jump up or they do something. And then the harder you press, the more feedback you would get. It could be, you could press harder there, or even let's say some part of the arm, like the wrist, when you touch that, you get feedback in another part of the body. So when you do that, there would be moments when the body would reposition. So it could either be, because you don't want to have these sequences like in yoga where, okay, that could be the sequence of the asana. The sequence, if there would be a sequence, would normally come about based on the situation, the moment, and the person, whatever the person is going through, that helps them to perceive something that needs to be seen. So why in the first place would they sit up or stand up? It helps them to see better. When someone's sitting up, normally in the vertical space, you can access certain brain regions that are more maybe awake. If people are also able to hold the dream process, a lot of people can't hold the depth or the trance sitting up or standing, but there are a lot of people who do it, like Daniel here, Ida, they do it. Like in Maya, we always observe like maybe 20% of people, 10%, not more than 20, 25. Most people would be laying down. But at the same time, I do want to share that when I began to facilitate this energy, before it was called inner dance, I was doing it with people sitting up. And I can't compare what is more magical because it was really, 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 really powerful. But when we speak about this, then we would need to also consider the position when someone goes into a fetal position or laying on the back. So I guess we want always, if there would be a position, that it comes from the person. But if you are going to intervene and you're going to use your own energy to move someone, which would be really important in many cases, repositioning would be more of learning how to open when you notice that something is closed. So those would be the instances when you see someone's arm is crossed or someone's legs are crossed. So you would open them bit by bit and see if it closes up again, then you leave that alone. It means it's not ready. So let's say you see someone super stiff and their arms are their hands are clenched, and repositioning could be as simple as opening up the hands or then moving it just a little bit by inches, and then you would be surprised that already creates a flow. And when you feed them that flow, the rest is history. It's really just gonna do its thing. So I think those are sets of instances when repositioning from an autonomic nervous system perspective would be very needed. But the more vertical positions, those definitely need to come from within. Yeah, interesting question. Thank you. Okay. So anyone else would like to? Yeah, amazing, and I'm really glad to hear from more people. But anyone else who are always usually sharing as well? Like, do you guys have any interesting thoughts and questions? While we're here in this call, yeah, this could be our last maybe teaching call or whatever you want to call that. Then we could just go into your own sharings the next call, which is going to be the last call we're going to have as a group. Yeah, so I guess you've covered a lot. This probably helps you, like this particular conversation, because you can see we're now applying everything that we've been learning, and what this could do for you is just to take what you know and to do stuff with it. But it could also just help invite you to go into this amazing deep study about like who are we and what are we, where are we coming from, what is also invisible that is making itself known now. There's so much mystery waiting and inviting us to be unraveled, and you really just need to do it. You just need to keep experiencing and go out there. The study part would be the feedback mechanism, so that when when you're experiencing something, to bring that into a full circle. It's like, okay, yeah, that explains like my universe and my earth and our cosmos. So we're all learning about like how much bigger everything is and how deep we go. So we'll always keep the conversations going. We have so many channels where you can just keep exploring and learning. but at the same time, I think so much has been shared, and even with what has come up in our 3 months together, you would need to, and you may want to keep visiting a lot of what's been shared. I myself, I cannot just keep sharing in this way, because the way we shared the last weeks, a lot of our meetings, they were like, there was a lot of effort in trying to hold coherence. So some of the Zoom calls, it sometimes takes weeks to unravel some of the things that are spoken about in like an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. So it would be good for you, like this thought that you can take so much time to, slowly, not to pressure yourself, to start to get curious about what is there, even bringing up levels and layers in you that's integrated therapy, just even becoming a kind of energy doctor, psychologist, just someone who gifts time and love and space. But like so much is being given, and it's belonging to exactly what it is that we're doing now. So I don't think we shared anywhere near what we were able to share, even though there's a lot more to share. Like what's been shared is maybe a lot more than what was shared in any of the past trainings. So it would be wonderful to see what you could do with this, where you can take this. Don't think that this needs to be clear in you. In the same way that when you learn a language, you simply immerse yourself in a new culture, simply exposing yourself to information and the energy itself. Something's already growing. You're already kind of deconstructing and decomposing a lot of these. So it's actually in the non-clear where something's kind of clear. At the very least, what you're expected to hold is like it's like the gist. The gist is like, it's like the big picture. It's like I get the sense of this, because that's how many layers. It's how many. There's a complexity in Mother Nature and the universe and the brain that's an intelligence. It's yours, and so starting with the gist means being able to think many things at the same time, to be able to multitask and to multi-think and to multi-feel, to multi-mean, multi-create, multi-sustain. That's like genius arising. That's brilliance at work, and that's practically why we do this. Like to open up the multiple senses so that you're processing like all these sounds around your environment, all these images that's being thrown all over the place, and all these like sensory modalities that you're just learning to integrate them and hold them as all one, so that this when you hold a journey, it's like you're holding like a container where possibly things can just come together, what likes to fragment and categorize and be separate, like holding like a possible story of all stories, and like where all stories could just interconnect that sometimes needs to begin as vibration, energy, and you know, whilst in the body, the parts are still intact and are just needing to integrate and become holistic somehow. Yeah. So yeah, like what just holding the gist, holding the sense would allow you to be a lot more compassionate, to be, you know, like a learner. We don't like to say students, like we like to say learners. A learner isn't inferior to someone who pretends he or she knows. To be a learner means to be in awe, to be curious, to be open to learning. You know, it means that you're growing. It means you're not stuck. It means that you're just open. You're humble, and you're observing that always something's bound to be a lot bigger than anything you can ever imagine. So learning, in a way, almost means that you allow yourself to become that thing that's so much bigger than you can ever imagine, which means that you are it in the becoming of it. So that's the brain. That's the kind of brain we're adjusting to, like a brain that's actually able to learn and to adapt, to evolve, to grow, to metabolize, to digest. So that's the general feeling people have after going through, in the past, what we used to hold as even just like 5-day trainings. Like maybe in a 5-day training, we would hold maybe 2 talks per day, and some of the talks would be just 2 hours or 3 hours long. So that would be about like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 talks, depending on how many experiences are happening. So people would just like, okay, what did I pick up from this? I don't actually know. That's what they say. And then when they go back home, what they have is the gist. You know, it's when you think about it, it's always the same. It's like when there's a question, the answer would normally bring up, oh, okay, no, there's the 2 things becoming one. There's the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. There's, you know, the high and the low. There's the hot and the cold. They're just becoming one. There's like the night and the day. There's the light and the dark. There's trust in the trigger. There's expansion and contraction. It's always just becoming one. So holding the gist of that, you know, no matter how you approach this, no matter what your question is, the answer is actually, if you think about it, every time I'm looking at a question with you, it's actually always the same answer. The answer is always, okay, take the thing that has a polarity that you either mentioned or invoked, that's implied, and then the answer is that they're eventually held by a third space, which in post-colonial theory is called the liminal space. The space in between is like the dream space. So that's where you can take your time with a lot of the details, because no matter what the detail, at the end of the day, it's actually like the same thing. But the way and the reason why you can actually hold the details either now or in the future is when you're given like a framework or a blueprint that you can put details upon, that then you can retain an awareness of what these details are, because you have like a container, and you know that's how your mind starts to evolve, so that what inner dance could possibly give you is the realization that like, everything's just the same. Like no matter where you look, it's the same theory, it's the same perspective, it's the same paradigm, it's the same understanding. And because a lot of that is not just conceptual to you, it's not just something you're reading in a book. It's something you're experiencing. It's something that you're learning to hold and to balance out, to honor and to just hold there in its most authentic way. You know, this idea that balance isn't the space in between only. It's to be both of them, whatever them are, to be able to hold all of them compassionately and inclusively, that they're all parts of us. They're all essential, beautiful parts of us. Then there's no space for judgment. There's no space for skepticism. There's only space for seeing like one cannot not be without the other. So it's actually all perfect. So you're experiencing that. That's why we're here, because we had the experience, and we're looking for, okay, what's the understanding of that experience? And it could be a simple understanding, but it also could be a beautiful, complex understanding that allows you to build a more comprehensive therapy, a more comprehensive world building project. You know, and to grow up, to grow like an earth or like a sun, you know, that's old, that's new. It's how this works. It's how innerdance works. It's what it gives you, this ability to explore the world, because you get the world, you become the world, not just as a feeling, but also like wisdom, like world wisdom. So we've been quite careful with that, you know, this isn't just to spiral down into the abyss, the void. It's also to grow, to give ourselves this global understanding that seems to be missing somehow, that seems to be not quite there. You know, we deserve an understanding as well of what this world is, not have to cancel out. You know, you need to stop thinking and not use this, but just be here. You know, what we're given is like, you deserve both of them. Okay, so the gecko there is saying this is a good time. My computer has 1 or 2%, and I left my charger in Maya. So if you could unmute and help me close this one, and then we can open a bigger one the next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Much love.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye
much.
to all.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.